G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by Crowcast. Of course, tons to talk about with the Crows and with the AFL finals looming, so without any further ado, let's crack straight in, shall we? Where are we? Here we go. Sorry about that. It wouldn't be the same without a technical hitch. How are you going, Pete?
Really well, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord for this pre-finals edition of Tuesday Night Live, and of course everyone who's also joined us on YouTube and maybe even Twitch. Tons to talk about today. First of all, Pete, as per usual, I'd like to hear your take on the weekend.
Didn't get to the game, even though I got some tickets. I gave them to a friend of mine, and I had a very nice, comfortable barbecue and a few bevies and watched it on the TV. And I actually really enjoyed the game. It looked like it was fairly wind affected, but I enjoyed the game. And look, I know that probably the standard wasn't great. North looked like they had packed up for the season, but I've got to say, I really did enjoy the last quarter. I enjoyed all of that emotion. I'm a bit of a sucker for all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought it was all really good stuff. And I thought there were some really good signs just in terms of, what the playing group sort of looked like and how they reacted. And I think that as a supporter, you couldn't but feel, heartened to see that level of, excitement. And there's it just looks like there's good stuff building down there, doesn't it?
It does. The way they got around the old fellas and saw them off, and also just the way they played as a group. And you feel like there's a changing of the guard down at the Crows, and there's some lads that are really taking ownership of the club and wanting to move it forward. And we had some interviews at the start of the season, and without fail, with those young lads, they all made the same comment that they felt like they were part of something fresh, and they wanted to take ownership of the club. And as we've seen with a few players bowing out, that's starting to occur. Look, I'd be interested in your take on the win, the value of the win versus the loss of 2 places in the draft list.
So I don't think it's a big deal, to be honest. I think that once you lose Jason, I think just so that everyone knows, there's a state game that's coming up this Saturday. The under-19s will play the Western Australia, so that's got the green light just today, actually.
Yeah.
So our boys will go over and play a state game, and that'll be a really good opportunity to have a look at some of these guys. But I just think that there's a bit of a blanket to be thrown over everyone after, probably Dacos, Horn, and to a little bit lesser extent Darcy. But in terms of the open draft, I think it's Horn, and then it really is a blanket over a few others. I mean, Callahan is up there, but really, do we, do you want to take a chance on a player like that when you know what his background is? So I don't think it hurts us a lot. If we were playing, if that was the Jason Horn Cup, then I'd be furious.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. North win that game, and they're still 2 points behind us. So, I think that for us, the Jason Horn Cup was that Hawthorn game.
I agree. That
was the one that you really had to lose if we were being fair dinkum about it.
Yeah.
So, no, I think that some good positives to take out of it. And I thought that Strawny was just absolutely brilliant against good competition. It's a good ruckman. I thought he was outstanding. 18 hit-outs to advantage.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
Yep.
And 19 possessions or something or other. And
that's right.
He had a big game. Fane, Strawny.
Well,
He
Goldstein wasn't
every
noticeable really, apart from ruck
no,
contests. He had no impact on play around the ground, whereas Kieran was involved in many passages of play. And I must put my hand up, Pete. I didn't think he was an AFL player last year when he played that game, and
yep,
look, credit to him. He's come on. He looks like his fitness has improved a lot. He didn't look slow like he did in that other game. And the couple of games that he's put together at the end of the season have really, I think, given the Crows' hierarchy something to chew over with regards to the future of Riley O'Brien, to be honest.
oh, absolutely. You know, he, I mean, Riley's, he gives us great endeavour around the ground. I think his contested marking is really, really strong as well. But that was Strawny's only his second game, and
Yeah.
so to put out a game like that, you'd have to say there's a lot of improvement in him. And I don't know, it's just something about him I really liked. I really liked Lockie Gallant's game. I like the fact that
Hasn't he got something?
Yeah, he's got something a bit special, hasn't he?
Yeah.
The way that he can just make, he can lose that front spot, but still just sort of make something happen. And
It's confidence, Pete. I nearly called you Macca then, sorry. It's confidence, Even in the first quarter, he went for a mark that he didn't quite take, but again, it was from way out of position, and he just came from nowhere and nearly stole the mark. And that's the measure of a lad who doesn't feel like he's, just playing a bit role. He wants to get in amongst it, and
yep.
I really, really like what I saw. I mean, you could see why maybe the Crows held him back because he's wafer thin, but by G, he's an AFL footballer.
He absolutely is. And you can just, I think what I really liked is that you could just see some real genuine pieces start to emerge. And when I say genuine pieces, I mean, obviously, Harry, again, just showing that, he can anchor that midfield. The other one that really is showing like he's going to be a piece is Braden Cook.
Yeah.
I mean, he is, he just looks like he's played 100 games already, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, out of 3 games, 2 plus 15 disposals. I think his first game was 7 and he had 19 on the weekend, and doesn't look out of place at all. What I like about the 2 young lads, Gallant and Cook, is they've just got a few tricks, and you always like to see that, just a little bit of something, Gallant aerially, and Cook doesn't mind selling a little bit of candy. He looks like he's got a bit of time. He doesn't panic. And, that's what you want to see from a kid at such an early stage of their career.
So you can just see it sort of just gradually little pieces being put together when you look at, Butts anchoring the defence. You look at, Harry in the midfield. You look at Ali. You look at a few, there's just some pieces that started to, when we were sitting here this time last year, Fane, we couldn't even see pieces, could we?
No.
But this year, you can see some pieces and say, yep, that's, they're going to be with us for the next, 10 years.
Yep. Now, a couple in the chat saying that my audio is crackling. Is that improved now, you blokes? Everything nice and clear? It's still crackling, is it? Well, that's interesting.
So, but I'll just chat away. There was so there was a lot of really, really good performances, and I think that that there's a lot to be said for, if we look historically, if we look back, there's a lot to be said for taking a really good morale lifting sort of win into the pre-season. So I think that was a really good thing. And if we look back on the year that was Fiend, I mean, it was 11 wins to get into the finals. And we ended up with 7.
Yeah.
And 5 of our games, we lost by 12 points or under.
Yep. Just keep giving me feedback, gentlemen, in the.
That sounds good, now.
In the chat, yeah. Oh, was that correctly for you too? Was it?
A little bit, yeah. I actually thought it was something to do with my earpiece, but
right. Okay.
There you go. Anyway, so that's my take.
To Scoot in the chat, I think he was up for a mug. We gave away a bit of merch on Sunday, Pete, and
Very nice.
Scoot, and it was for people who'd been the highest participants in the chat, and I think Scoot was amongst that. But given the filthy, derogatory comments that are coming my way from that particular listener, I don't know. I might have to just line the mug with some sort of unpalatable matter. Anyway, all right, let's get on with it. Enough of that. So we've got 2 blokes in the All Australian team, Seeds, or in the All Australian squad, I should think. I should say Seeds and Laird. That's probably well deserved, both of them.
Absolutely.
So I think either of them making the team.
I don't, although I really wish that Seed would, because what I'd really, really wish is just for once they'd actually pick a team that's a team.
Yeah, that's right.
What they'll do is instead of putting probably Langdon and Seedsman on the wings, which is what they should do, they'll just put all of the guys that miss out on the midfield. They'll just stick on the wing. Really,
yeah.
Both Langdon and Seedsman both deserve. Was Langdon named in the squad?
I can't remember, to be honest with you. Can't remember.
So he and Seedsman, for me, have clearly been the 2 best wing players. And, anybody that understands the game knows that the wing is a genuine position.
Absolutely.
It's a genuine position. And there are wingmen, and then there are other midfielders. And it just shits me off that the only reason Seed won't get in that last 22 is because they don't pick a team in position.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think he deserves it.
He might make a bench. I don't think Laird gets in. Without being commenting too much on other teams, I could not believe that Buddy Franklin got in and Travis Boak didn't.
Apparently, though, I read today that it goes on. The clubs nominate the players in the first instance. Have I heard that?
Oh, really?
Correctly?
No.
Yeah, and the court didn't nominate Boak. Something to do with that.
Now, Pete, it's all falling apart here. All falling apart here because now apparently my camera's frozen. So you keep talking, and I'm just going to fix that for a minute.
So hopefully, look, I'd love to see Seed get in, but he won't. But I think what that does, Fane, is it also just shows that we have had a pretty good year, and so even though obviously we've had some down points, I think there's a lot of positive stuff to take. One thing that we probably should have a chat about was the parting comments in the media of Daniel Talia. You no doubt would have heard that, and I certainly saw some sound bites on that. I thought, to be honest, a little bit disappointing, mentioning, of course, that he's not prepared to go to the best and fairest, and words to the effect that there are still some problems down at the Crows, that we're still a long way from finals, which we know, and
I'm back.
I think that and that he won't be going to the best and fairest, but will catch up with some of the senior players. So I thought that was all a little bit, disappointing, and I understand that he didn't get a contract, which he was probably looking for, but at the end of the day, he's been pretty well looked after. It goes both ways, Fane, doesn't it? He's been pretty well looked after. We're
talking about Charles?
Contracts. Yep.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I feel like there was a little bit of unnecessary... Jesus Christ. A little bit of unnecessary sour grapes there. Disappointing. So whether Daniel feels a bit let down by how he's been managed in terms of his injuries and all that sort of stuff.
That could be it.
And look, let's not forget too, Pete, that in terms of his value to the club, he was the one that got up and really tried to G the club up a few years ago at an end of season function, and I think he's been all in with the club. Let's not forget he's a Victorian. He's stuck with Adelaide throughout his career. So I guess I can kind of understand it to a point. It's a shame. This is the reality of AFL football, unfortunately. Yeah. And, there's not a lot that can be done in that regard. No. And apologies for people while I've just been messing around with my camera, but I think I'm all right now.
It's kind of one of those 6 of one, half dozen of the other, isn't it? It's a tricky one. And The one that sort of just stayed with me a little bit was the fact that he wouldn't go to the BNF, but just wanted to catch up with some senior players.
Yeah.
I just wonder, does that feed into? I mean, we've had issues with trying to wind down the careers of some of the senior guys over the last 5, 6, 7 years, haven't we? And I just wonder if that feeds into a little bit of that senior player culture.
Peter, you and I have said for years there is something not quite right with that group.
Yeah.
And we could be clutching at straws, jumping at shadows or whatever. But I do agree with you that Daniel's attitude is just another example of a disconnect, I think. A clicky something or other going on, I'm not quite sure. And he would be miffed, I guess, that a couple of rookies have taken over his spot and done exceptionally well in Geordie Butts and Nick Murray. So, I don't know. I've said for a while now that I don't think we'll be on the true path to redemption until that squad that 2017 squad is completely gone.
Yeah,
and I mean completely, from Rory Sloane down. And no disrespect to the individuals, because like Sloaney and those players have sacrificed a lot for the Adelaide Crows. But I just think as a mix, as a group, there's just something not quite right about it. It's just something missing that, that was different to, say, a Richmond or a Hawthorn of their era or a Geelong of their era.
Yeah. No, look, Fane, you and I and the great Vardy, we've had these conversations, I reckon, 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And we've all agreed that they've got to go, every single one of them.
Yep.
And as you say, it's no disrespect, but the time has definitely come that they've got to move on. So.
Yep. The only other thing I'd touch on is that I saw in Dispatches today that a few pundits had a crack at their Rising Star winner and top 5, and Harry Schomburg, not one speck of recognition, and yet I think out of all of them, Harry Schomburg is probably going to be the best of the lot.
Yeah,
apart from maybe Riley, but Riley will probably qualify later. But
yeah, I think that's look, it is disappointing, but we get used to it, don't we? And then we hear these bland, pathetic statements that come up every now and then. Gary Lyon's the best one for it. When he'll say, if player B was in Melbourne, he'd be considered to be one of the best players in the competition. And they have sort of this rider that comes across that, because he's outside of Melbourne, people don't recognise, if he'd been in Melbourne, and you just sort of think, oh, geez, really? Are we still that much of a eccentric competition? But we are. And interesting that they all have Mitch Georgiadis in there. But so Port is definitely, has always been and will always be a Victorian stepchild.
Yep.
So that's, but anyway, that's that. We know what he's like, so he'll be fine.
And I guess we're a victim to the centralisation of the media in Australia, because most of our media in Adelaide runs from the eastern states. There's precious few prominent sports journalists in South Australia, and the ones that are here tend to pander to the two clubs in order to get decent stories. So that's why we exist, Pete. To try and bring some balance niche to the world. That's a little niche. That's right. Don't forget, if you're in the chat, don't be shy. Get your hand up, get amongst it, and we'll be happy to have you on for a bit of a chat. Now, let's have a look at a few injury updates. Rory Sloane, surprise, surprise, going to have surgery to repair his left finger.
Yeah,
couldn't sacrifice that spot to Sam Berry or Lukey Pedler for a few weeks, but anyway. So there you go. Luke Pedler's coming back from an ankle injury, but he's also going to have a left shoulder reconstruction. So there must have been some stuff going on there that they want to tidy up.
Yep.
The Berg has recovered from his minor hamstring injury and tied in time to be traded to Gold Coast. He's also having reconstruction surgery on a shoulder, on his right shoulder. So there's a bit of off-season stuff going on. You wonder why they didn't send these blokes out to pasture a little bit earlier on. But anyway, Luke Brown with his Achilles surgery, he started running last week, so he's back. Miller continues to progress from his patella surgery.
He'll be good. He'll be a handy addition next year, I reckon.
It'll be very interesting to see how they play him, actually.
Yep.
Whether he's midfield or whether he's running halfback.
He'll be a good recruit.
Yep, absolutely. Well, but by the same token, injury and layoff notwithstanding, I think I'd give him half a season. He's an integral part of our team if he's playing well, and we need to be able to see that he's back to that pre-injury form, because he spent a lot of time on our list and a lot of time being maybe, and he's shown flashes and a little bit of consistency, and then he got thrown around a fair bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Matty Crouch, obviously, rehab from his groin surgery. He's expected to be in a good position to attack the start of the pre-season, wherever that may be. And we'll talk about some potential trades in a moment, Peter. Mitchy Hinge, I'm looking forward to his return because I like him a lot. He's had shoulder recon, so he should be good to go in pre-season. Jack Haitley as well, groin soreness. No surgery for Jackson, so it looks like they're just going to try and manage it with training loads and rehab and whatnot. And Rolly O'Brien obviously had that lateral ligament tear in his knee. Didn't have surgery and is expected back as normal. So a bit of surgery, a bit of why didn't they send them off sooner? But never mind. That's the Adelaide Crows for you. Yeah, go on.
I'm just talking about, I think you mentioned that we'd talk about a few trades. I think I'm just watching the chat, and there just seems to be a whole lot of messages up there being posted about Jacob Hopper. Have I missed something along the way? I put something in our chat just earlier today, just because he was a player that we talked about months ago, Fiend, didn't we?
Yeah.
We said, if we get an early draft pick, what should we do? And he's one that I identified months and months ago, saying that he's out of contract and he's absolutely one that you'd buy 100 miles an hour for. But I'll tell you this is what I think about. There's a lot of publicity, isn't there, around us at the moment in terms of our salary cap, and with the names that are all being thrown around. We've gone from there's Parfitt, there's Maynard, there's Stevens, there's Dawson. Apparently now there's Hopper. And
bit of chat around Dunstan and Jamont earlier in the season, which seems to have died off a bit.
Yeah, and all I would say is this. It's really, really time that this football club got serious, and what they need to do, and this is the reason why I posted what I posted today just in our Crows chat, which you saw.
Yep.
Go out and be bloody serious about it. Go out. We've got draft picks coming out of our butt. Strong draft picks. We've got a lot of money. Go out, target, whether it be Dawson, whether it be Hopper, whether it be whoever, pay them some money. Do to them what happened to us. Make them offers they can't refuse. Pay them overs. Get them.
Yeah.
Don't dick around.
Well, I honestly think that Dawson's the one that we might have a sniff at, simply because of Sydney's cap squeeze. They've got a couple of blokes that are looking for contracts. Parker is looking for a grandfather deal to get him through, and he's like 29, so he's looking for a bit. And they've got a couple of others. Obviously, Buddy has got a year to run on his, so they're still carrying the back end of his contract. But there's reportedly a bit of a squeeze at Sydney with regards to salary. Dawson said that he wants to stay in Sydney, or is happy to stay in Sydney, I should say, but he's one that if you chucked a deal down in front of, it would do one of two things. It would either entice him across, or it would just make Sydney hurt in terms of their cap situation. Hopper, I really like him as a player, I really do. I'm not sure how we can get that done though, Pete. I don't know whether the club will be willing to give up our first round pick, and I think it would take our first round pick and stuff to get him.
How would we go now? The one that could play into this is Sarah from Freo.
Yep.
Now, if Carlton are going to have to give up their first, that's going to leave Freo with 6 and 8.
Yep.
They will want Erasmus. Now Erasmus will play. He's from Subiaco.
Yeah.
He's the number 1 WA midfielder coming up in the draft, and he is being, he's in that group of maybe 10 to 12 players that people are throwing a blanket over.
Yeah.
If he has a big, we'll watch him on Saturday. If he has a big chance, then what will Freo give up to jump ahead for say pick 4, and to make sure they get Erasmus. Do you know what I'm where
yeah,
I'm
I do know.
I
do know where you're going, and I guess that takes me back to the question at the top of the show about losing pick 2. It wasn't so much about the actual choices at pick 2 for me. It was the flexibility that it gave us. Given that Callaghan was going to be highly sought after, we would have had teams jumping at that number, and we just lose a little bit of leverage at pick 4. But I do agree that it could be enticing for a club like Freo who want to jump up and make sure that they nab their man. You know what, Pete? As much as I'd like us for once to be aggressive at trade, I'm not. I can't see it at the moment. We've got one first rounder, like one top 10, and then we've got 2 in the second round. We've got a potential, I would say, end of second round for Matty Crouch, a possible third rounder for Kelly. And I was having a bit of a discussion on Big Footy today about what you'd need to do if you want to be aggressive, and I put up a player of the ilk of Chase Jones. If you really want to be serious about getting quality midfield talent into the club, then as good as Chase Jones has been for us this season, he is exactly the currency that you need to put on the table together with picks and all the rest of it to get a gilt-edged midfielder across the line. And so many people are against, Chase has had a great season, all the rest. Yes, he has, absolutely. But you've got to give a little to get a little. And Adelaide have shown themselves not really. We're always the bargain hunters, aren't we? The Kirtley Hamptons, the Paul Seasmans, always looking for value. And we've never been at the pointy end going, you know what, we want that player. What's it going to take?
Yeah.
And I don't see that changing, unfortunately.
Well, that's what I guess that's what I was, and I agree with you. That's what we've always been like, which is why I made that point to start off this discussion. Is that just for once, I'd like to see us, do it differently and say, we're going to target a player and come hell or high water. I mean, Port do it every year.
Yep.
They just go and find it. And they say, well, this is who we need. And you think, oh, there's no way they're going to shift that player. And they do. They shift it.
Yeah, that's right.
They pay up. They pay the money and they pay the draft picks.
That's right. Now we've got Sloane Ranger joining us, Pete. G'day, Sloane Ranger. How are you going?
Good day, guys. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Very well. How are you going?
Yeah, I've just got a few questions. So from what I've heard about Roberts, he's sort of in and under type. Just wondering, if we keep Crouch, is there a point going after him, or are we, going to look more at Draper, or is there someone else that we could look at instead in the draft?
Sloane, there's a few that you can throw a blanket over, but I love the fact that we've got those 2 boys that are in that group. They're very, very different players, and you're spot on with Matty because he is definitely an in and under player, very, very smart player. I think that probably the key difference with Matt and with Matt Crouch is Robbo's kick.
About 30 metres. About 30 metres every time he puts the foot in it.
Robbo is a really, really penetrating kick, and he's a much more direct player than Matty Crouch. And I reckon if you have a look at Robbo's stats through the year, the one to really look at is his inside 50 stats. Now, when he played league for South a couple of weeks ago, he picked up 20 possessions and he played on a wing for South, and 7 of those are inside 50 kicks. So he's a player that is just continually driving the ball pretty directly forward, whereas Matty Crouch just tends to probably crab a little bit, I think. But he's a very, very different player to Arlo. Arlo is your X factor sort of player, guy that can take him out forward. He's got some tricks. He's very much more an athletic sort of player, which is kind of like that's why I'd really like to get them both, because they are very, very different players, and they complement each other really well.
Yeah.
No worries. And I just also wanted to ask, who's actually sort of seemingly gettable from other clubs? Obviously, we've got a lot of names thrown around, Lucaco and Rankin, obviously more next year, but you've got Maynard and Dumont and a lot of other names thrown around. Who's actually gettable in your eyes?
Dean, I'll give that one to you.
I think Stevens might be gettable from Sydney. He's not been getting a run, seemingly on the outer South Australian lad, very outside player, but just been smoking it in the twos for Sydney. I think he's gettable. I actually think Isaac might be gettable this year, even though he's got a year to run. I think that could happen. But again, I don't see us being able to wangle something for Hopper. I don't see us being aggressive enough for someone like Dawson. We don't usually pay what needs to be paid unless it's for a 30-year-old has-been like Bryce Gibbs. I think if I was to put money on something, Sloan, I'd be saying that it'd be Stevens back from Sydney. That'd be the one.
Yeah, no worries. Also, one last one. Do you think that I would think there's a big chance that we might see a big leadership shift next year? Maybe some more focus on Tommy, maybe even becoming captain next year. Just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Well, we've got a void at the vice captaincy level, haven't we now? DT was vice captain.
I love the thought. You know what? I would do it. I would be handing it over to Tom next year. Absolutely.
Well, and if Rory is the club man, I think he would recognise that he is now an elder statesman. His role as a mentor, as a senior player, and I think he would see that it's time to hand over the baton. I mean, we got some kids who are really showing some leadership on the field now, and you've got Tommy as the obvious one, but there's a couple of others as well. I wouldn't shy away from giving a young kid like Schoenberg the vice captaincy just to really elevate him in the group. Yep. There's a couple of others as well. So Rory Laird is obviously another one that would have to be in the discussion. So I think you're right, Sloan. I think the time is right for a change in leadership there.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Great questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your support, Sloan. We'll shuffle you back to the motley crew in the audience.
Good questions, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's why we have a live studio audience, Pete, to make us, not have to come up with everything. But the leadership question is a really good one, though.
It really is. It really is, and there's certainly something to be discussed there. And I would love to see Tom get it. And I think you're right. I think Harry, I think Riley Stiltop shows plenty of leadership potential. There's a few of them down there at the moment. Geordie Butts, all these kids. These are kids that can step up. As to the question about what we're doing in the draft, look, I'd really urge if anybody. Keep your eye out for a stream or whatever. But as I said, on Saturday afternoon, there'll be the South Australia, West Australia under-19 game over in Perth.
Yep.
I'm not exactly sure what time it'll be, but it'll be really worth having a look at that, because you'll be able to see all these boys that we've been talking about through the year theme. So no excuses for people not to know who they are. and we can have a little bit of a look at some of the boys in the West as well. So
we'll be asking questions next week, won't we, Pete? There'll be a quiz. So people in the chat, if they can't answer, simple questions like what number was Arlo and how many touches did Matty Roberts get, then they're banned for a week, basically. And yes, Sloane Ranger, I reckon she might have been the first female voice we've had on the Crowcast, aside from Nikki, in the whole 6 years that we've been going, Pete.
There you go. Congratulations.
And Nick better watch out, because Sloane made a lot of sense.
She made a hell of a lot of sense, didn't she?
And she's here on a Tuesday night. Where's Nikki? In bed. Anyway. All right.
I see there's other names just come up in the chat there, Feen, just quickly while we're talking about the trade period.
Sure.
And there's other names that have been chucked around. I mean, there was someone was talking about Aaron Francis. His name seems to come up every couple of years. I know that he actually requested a trade to us 2 years ago. And,
yeah, he did.
The Dodoro said no.
Yeah.
We
want 9 firsts. And
we want 9 firsts.
Yeah.
So there's talk about him wanting to come. There's always talk about him wanting to come back. There's been some talk about Chad Wingard. So there is a lot of names. George Hewitt is out of contract and a free agent.
What do you think about the Chad Wingard whispers?
Look, he's had a pretty good year in terms of on the field. You just have to be really, really careful about what he brings off field.
Yeah,
you're building a really good culture down there at the moment.
Yeah,
you'd have to just make sure that Chad's in the right headspace. But he's 28, 29, so he's not really in that 5-6 hit zone that we really want.
Yeah.
I don't think. But with that said, I'm sure he would be relatively inexpensive, and he's had, to be fair to him, he's had a good year. If you looked at his numbers, he's had a good year.
Oh, no doubt. I worry about his off-field stuff. I worry about his age in terms of what we're trying to do with our profile, because to me, it feels like we're really trying to knock the top off the list age-wise at the moment, Pete, and reconfigure and get rid of that, that big void, 24 to 27-year-olds, and that's going to take a couple of years to redress. And as much as Chad would be good for a couple of years on the outside, I think in a developing side, I don't think we're the right club for him. In fact, to be perfectly honest with you, all politics and all that aside, I reckon Port could do with him back, to be honest.
Yeah. No doubt. I'd tell you, the one that I would really seriously look at would be Francis. I would look at him. I think he's a really, really untapped talent. But I don't think he's ever really been able to put it together.
Do we have enough players of that type or that in that area of the ground, though, Pete?
I think you get him pretty cheap, and I think he can go forward or back. What is he, a 192, 3?
Yeah,
kind of guy. Maybe we do. But if you could get him cheap enough, then he'd be one to look at. But look, the real issue is the midfield, as we both know.
Yeah,
that's why a Dawson, a Stevens, a Hopper. These are the kind of guys they've got to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. NT Rabbit raises a question about Mackesy. Obviously, he had his off-field stuff going on at the beginning of the year, the personal issues of that, and at one stage it looked like he might head back. Where do you see him ending up in the Crows lineup, assuming he makes it? Forward or back, Pete?
I've seen him forward a couple of times. Really, really liked what I've seen. In patches, so you think, he looks like he really could play forward. Doesn't appear to be any real, and this shouldn't come as a surprise because he has played as a back for most of his junior life, but he doesn't really seem to have a full game plan as a forward. Does that make sense? So you'd need to coach. He would need some real work as a coach.
Yeah.
Try and turn him into forward.
Now, I don't know whether you've got someone asleep there in the room with you, but you've just gone a little bit quiet, Pete.
Oh, sorry, mate.
No, you're right. Yeah,
So
look,
that would be my concern.
I think we've got better options down back. I don't feel like he's aggressive enough at the contest to be a defender. He doesn't have enough closing speed to be able to shut down a tall forward, like a Tom Lynch or someone like that plays tall and can get on his bike as well. And then when you look at him up forward, he's probably got better hands than Himmelberg and Frampton have shown at that level. But does he have enough tricks aside from being able to take a mark? We've seen Berg and Riley go really well at ground level. I'm really concerned about Fisher, to be honest with you, and I'd love for him to be another player that proves us wrong. But he doesn't have the option of a Chase Jones where he can completely reinvent himself. He's either a key forward or a key defender, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right. I'd like to see, just to give him one more year at least, and I think he had a really difficult pre-season with all of his father's health issues. He started late. He was in Victoria for a lot of the time. There was a lot of drama associated with that. There was a lot of talk that he was going to, whether he was going to seek a compassionate trade home. So he had a really interrupted pre-season, and you know what that can do. So I think the only way that we can really judge him is to have if he has a good solid run at it this pre-season, and launches himself next season. If we're sitting here having the same conversation next year, then sure, you probably pull the trigger on him.
Yeah. So the other one I'm wondering about is Shane Mcadam. We talked about Fremantle earlier and their desire perhaps to get up the draft board. Can we work Shane Mcadam into something perhaps that works for Fremantle?
Absolutely. Sell high with Shane, and that's no disrespect to him. But, coming off of a couple of seasons where he's shown quite a bit, and particularly just in the last game, which is handy. Shane's not a young player. He's, 26?
26, yep.
Yeah, so, I can't see the arrow pointing up for too much longer with Shane. I reckon now would be the absolute perfect time to get a good return on that draft pick.
Yeah. Patrick Lyons also mentions another player who might be gettable is Sam Petreski-Seaton. Got any thoughts on him?
Would love to have him just because of his ball use. But see, that's an interesting one because he's I think he's either a cousin or a close friend of Shane's.
Yeah, right.
Both from Halls Creek. And so there's plenty around on social media, those two together, particularly on holidays when they go back home. So those two are pretty close. So if you shipped Shane out, you might not get Petreski-Seaton, but would love to have a look at him because he is just I don't think he's been particularly well managed, and he's a very, very smooth mover. Yeah.
Of course, we've also, and we'll spend a lot more time looking in depth at all of this as we move forward, but so we're just sort of spitballing here tonight, but we've got the issue of being able to have the list space for some of this to work as well. And at the moment, I think as it stands, and Mac has done 93 hours of research on this, so
I saw that.
But I think we'd need to drop a couple off. Obviously, a couple of retirements helps, but I think we're still about 2 short of having enough spots. Is that how I read it? So that's going to be interesting too. Do you see any standout delistings at this stage?
Oh, I think that Benny Davis is it would be a lot of difficulty, and that's not because I'm a big fan of Ben, and I think that he started to show just a little bit towards the end of the season. But I just have the feeling that he's going to be in a little bit of difficulty. They're going to give it they'll offer a contract to Lockie Gallant, I'm sure. Karen Crows mentions The Rock, and Barty Magic reckons The Rock. I think he's probably in a little bit of trouble. There was some, whether he's one that might want to go back to Perth. If you're talking about, chatting with Fremantle.
No one to pay
so
for
I think,
He'd be the
No.
steakiest of steak knives.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So Ben Davis, Matt Crouch, I think will probably go, and Ronan O'Connor, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that those three are probably the most likely.
Lockie Murphy?
Yeah.
I know they love him.
They love him. They absolutely love him. You can get set. He'll play if he wants to. He'll play 300 games for the Crows. Lockie Murphy. They love him. Absolutely love him. Kelly Labs mentions he's one that is not yet contracted for next year, so he could be. There's talk about Braden Maynard. Whether there's something that you can do there. So we've certainly been linked to a lot of players, and so they've just got to start. They really have to, make some of these steps, because the one thing that you can't underestimate, Feen, is that when you do have, yes, we jump from pick 2 to 4, but if you've been approached by the Crows and you're watching that game on Sunday night thinking, is that a place I want to go? There was a lot of good stuff happening on the field. You think, that looks like a pretty good group. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also
that feeds
they've won
into
7.
that. Sorry, go on.
I just say, we've won 7 games. We've won 7 games. We look like we're on the move.
Yeah. And that again feeds into the narrative about maybe as a toxic senior group being less attractive for recruits in the past, maybe stories or whatever. You never know. We're totally hypothesising at that. So I've thrown up Chase as a player that I would term as love to keep, happy to trade. Who would be your number one love to keep, happy to trade player at the moment?
Oh, that's almost a title for a whole episode, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I've thrown it at you because we decided not to have a new format this week.
And we've got to talk about someone that might have a bit of value too, don't we?
Yes.
Love to keep, happy to trade.
Yeah.
I'm going to go big.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Riley O'Brien.
Yes. I don't mind that one. I don't mind that one.
I'm going to get some reaction, but I'm only saying that because I was wowed by Strawny. I reckon you could probably put Strawny up there. You could cover if you kept Himmelberg, you could do some ruck work, and I wouldn't mind seeing us just with a rookie pick draft, a development ruckman. Because I think it's something that we haven't had in our list for a while as a developing ruck. I suppose we've had Strawn as a developing ruck, but you could argue.
Well, he was mature age though when we took him on.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind doing that.
Well, what I like about Strawn is that he plays forward as well. He's played forward at SANFL level, and you saw him have a snap for goal, and he didn't look, even though it was speculative, he didn't look cumbersome in doing so. And I think, we were talking last week about, maybe rotating 3 tools through the ruck and forward area and really stretching opposition. And when you think about it, Kieran probably provides a better option in that regard than O'Brien does.
Yeah, and he's a beautiful kick for goal. I've seen him at the SANFL level. He's an immaculate kick for goal.
Yeah.
But that won't happen. And who just made the point there? Ned on YouTube just made the point. He's just signed a 4-year deal. It won't happen. But I guess on the spot, that was just a name that came to me.
Yeah. Brody Smith?
Sort of out of the blue. Brody Smith.
I've been happy to trade Brody for 5 years.
Yeah, I've been happy to trade Brody for a good many years, as you well know. I don't think he's ever, whether it's concussion related or whatever, I don't think he's ever delivered on those early years where he was an All-Australian.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that he was never the same after that Collingwood game. He was All-Australian, and then the following year he was just absolutely carving the place up. And then he had that really nasty concussion over at Marvel. NT Rabbit was at the game. I know this probably sounds silly, but I just feel like he was never the same after that game.
Yeah. And look, I really like Brody, but there was one passage of play on the weekend that really highlighted to me the difference between Paul Seedsman and Brody Smith when it comes to the value of their kicking. And I've always thought that Brody is an excellent line-breaking kick, but he struggles with spotting up short. and there was a spot up that he kicked down the middle, and it didn't amount to a turnover or anything like that, but his technique, because he kicks so, like, he's real, in cricketing terms, round arm, he's round-legged, it's almost impossible for him to spot up a short pass. And he tried to spot up someone from the back pocket at centre-half forward, and it was very laboured, and it dropped short and could have gone anywhere, sort of thing. And I think, the way the game's evolving at the moment, at least Seedsman, even though he does tend to bomb a bit, he can hit up short passes when he drops his eyes, whereas Brody struggles, and we've seen in big moments Brody missing targets, haven't we, Pete?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, though, in terms of aggressive trading, don't forget we've got our 2022 first and second.
Yeah.
I think they may. I think that with the loss of experience, we may just have a little bit of a marking on the spot next year. I'm not sure we'll go too further forward or back, just because you've got to look at the fact that some of those close games we won this year were on the back of some good performances, particularly in the early games from experienced players. So, they'll be a year older or not there. Our 2020, I think that you can probably mark our 2022 first as probably, another top, 5 to 8 sort of pick at worst. So that's something that could be put on the table.
Yeah. Sev's saying we need to push for finals next year. No. Not in my opinion. We can certainly aim for that, but I think next year is all about getting another 20 games into our core group of next generation players, and seeing what else whether we can get a couple of games into Newchurch if he stays on the list. Having a look at Ball Ace, who's really kicked on in the second half of the season. Getting Lukey Pedler on the park and getting 20 games into him. Getting more games into Gallant, getting more games into Thilthorpe. Settling on a midfield that doesn't rely on Laird, Keys and Sloan, getting more midfield minutes into Berry and Harry, of course, and Luke and a couple of others, maybe Miller as well. So I think next year is a real platform for the future next year. Yeah, if we can add a bit of cream and just continue to work the system and continue to get the game plan down and just get another 20 games into these blokes. I actually am quite bullish about our list. The talent that we've seen throughout the course of the season, Pete, and we haven't even spoken about Josh Worrell, who's still got, an opportunity.
Yep.
There's some talent there, and there's some kids that don't lack confidence. And I think in the past, what I reckon with a lot of the kids that we've picked up in the midfield, like Gallucci and Paholke and even Chase Jones for that matter, they haven't seemed to be confident at the level. And yet, when you look at Shuey and you look at even Pedler's couple of games and Sam Berry, they don't look overawed at all. Braden Cook doesn't look overawed at all. And that's what I like about our current crop, that they look like they feel that they belong.
No, and I think that's why they just want to probably try and pick up, even if it's just a free agent or two in that sort of 100, 150 game bracket. And that's why they might have been looking at a Demont or a Hewitt or a Dunstan. Vardy Magic, I saw you put there Dunstan for Straw, and Dunstan's a free agent as well. So, just a little bit of extra body around for those boys. But you're absolutely spot on that next year is a platform year, because this year they had those older players around them, and to bring them in, get their the first few games under their belt, get a bit of belief, win 7 games, and you can see that's really galvanised the group. So I think that has kind of worked. But you're now taking some of those senior players away, and also they'll be a year older.
Yeah.
What you're looking to do next year, it's almost like a transfer of ownership year, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. And that's why Sloane's suggestion earlier on about a leadership change is very timely, because I think it's spot on. Your use of the word transition is perfect there. So it's going to be very interesting. And I think that's the way Nick sees it. I think he's been biding his time a bit. And, I guess it's delicate for him because he's got some much-loved senior players that maybe, I wouldn't say he had to tolerate, but he had to defer to a little bit. I think now, surprisingly, whether it's by coincidence, chance, or just perception, I think the tech situation has really given him license to go, all right, this is it now. We pissing this lot off, and we're going again. So
yeah, absolutely right. So
yeah, well, let's finish off just quickly on. We'll finish off the Crows talk just on Tex. Any more thoughts after a couple of weeks? Do you think he'll be back next year?
I still think he will. I think he'll be back. I think he'll play out his contract. I think the players are having a meeting tomorrow, I think, to see if he would come to the best and fairest.
Yep.
I think that he'll go. I think he'll go to the best and fairest. And I think that they'll put it behind, and I think he'll be there next year.
Yep. Okay. I do too, for what it's worth. And before we go, because I've defibrillated my audio, I don't know why it's crackling tonight, but your tips for the first week of finals, we got a couple of tasty ones. The Bulldogs versus Essendon should be very tasty, Pete.
Yeah, I was bitterly disappointed with the Western Bulldogs on Friday night to give up a 3-goal lead with 6 minutes to play. Was when they had so much riding on it, I thought they were really, really ordinary in that last few minutes. I just thought, you just don't deserve it. So I kind of hope Essendon knock them over for their 4th loss in a row and get rid of them, to be honest. I thought Bontempelli was rubbish. Yeah. And there was no leadership. There was nothing in those. When Boak, Wines and Gray all stood up at the end, there was nothing from the Bulldogs. They were pathetic. So I'd like to see the back of them.
I think the Bulldogs really suffer, and I said this on Sunday, so sorry for repeating myself, but Josh Bruce out hurts them, not only because it gives them one less target up forward, but it makes Bontempelli far more accountable when he goes up forward. And as Inquisitor says, it's Lukey Beveridge as well.
Why wouldn't they play Jamara? I mean, I don't get that, but anyway,
I don't get it.
Weird.
Yeah. Melbourne and Brisbane should be a classic, I reckon. I might even go to that game, because I reckon it'll be a cracker.
Yeah, I think Melbourne will get across the line there.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that they will get a massive. I watched that game on the weekend. I think they'll get a massive amount of belief out of that last quarter against Geelong. So they'll be good.
Yeah. Speaking of the Cats, they've got who the hell have they got?
The mob down the road.
Port, obviously.
Treader's already whinging that they might not have their second final at Adelaide Oval, and so I think, well, guess what? You're the only team in the finals that's getting a home game.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
Weekend. So
Sydney and GWS have got to go to UTAS, for God's sake.
Yeah, they're just so pathetic. I can't even, and then Stephen Marshall, obviously a Port supporter, and just watch him just bowl ahead with another complete misuse of power and increase the numbers. Just watch that happen. You mark my words.
Yep.
That was a Crows game. There's no chance in hell that would happen. But because Marshall is just a dyed-in-the-wool Port supporter, you watch him misuse his power. And I say that honestly, without joking. He'll misuse his power, and he will increase that crowd. You watch.
Yeah, 30,000. Here we come.
Of 30,000. But anyway, then they can all piss off to Perth.
Yeah. Speaking of Sydney and GWS, any chance GWS?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think they're playing really good football. They're one of the form teams.
They're flaky, Pete.
Do you think? Flaky. I think they'll win.
I mean, week after week, Macca and I were sort of watching them just float around the edge of that 8, and every time they had a game to consolidate, they lost it. And so, I don't know. I don't trust Cameron as a coach. I don't trust their midfield against Sydney's work ethic. I think the ground suits Sydney. I think Sydney will flatten them, actually, to be honest.
I think they GWS remind me a little bit of us in 2016. If they're on, they'll be they might be hard to beat. But let's hope that they. I kind of hope they get rolled, and we can then get Nixie to ring up his old mate Jacob and say, "Come on,
that's it.
Get over here."
That's it. Exactly right. On that note, Peter, I've kept you for an hour, which is an achievement in itself.
Oh, that's good. Good fun.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry about the crackly audio, the crappy camera, and all the rest of it. Thanks Sloan, for joining us on the chat tonight. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on
Yeah, it was
Discord
brilliant.
and YouTube. If you want to support us, don't forget to get around Patreon, AFL Crowcast. And we will be back on Sunday night to talk about the finals, the first week of the finals. So don't miss that. We'll be back then. Until then, stay safe and we'll see you later.
Good chat. See you guys. Bye now.
See ya.